All right guys, so today we're gonna do another one of these like finance videos. I've done a few of them already on my channel and some of you guys are here for it. Some of you guys enjoy like me just talking about money and different financial situations. So that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna talk about home buying, what it entails, buying a new house. We're gonna talk a little bit about the market and all of the craziness that's happening and just kind of give you an idea of what our experience has been in buying a house and all of that. I got a bunch of questions from you guys on Instagram, so I have them in front of my screen here. I have like my little notes up and I just want to have like a friendly chit chat with you guys. By no means am I a financial expert, right? I didn't go to school for finance or anything like that, but Joe and I now have purchased 2 homes. So we bought our house down in Homestead. When we were back living in Miami, we lived in a house in Homestead and we bought that house and then we sold it when we moved into this house here in Virginia, which we also bought. So we have a little bit of experience. Obviously everybody's situation is different, but I thought it would be fun to just like share just like what we've gone through and some helpful tips along the way. I will tell you, I got a lot of questions from people just basically saying like, where do you start, period? What's the process of buying a house? How much money do you need to have saved? What does a down payment look like? So we're gonna answer as many of those as I can. I'm kind of setting like a limit here because I could probably be talking about this all day. So we'll do all of that. I'm excited just to like talk about this stuff. And of course, I wanna thank NerdWallet for sponsoring today's video. I've already worked with NerdWallet once before in the past. I'll link that video down below. That video was all about like how Joe and I save money for travel using travel credit cards and all of that. So definitely check that one out if you've missed it. But NerdWallet, I'll talk to you guys about them in a few minutes. I'll show you guys their website and stuff. I was looking through all of the resources that they have. Like they have a lot of really great like online calculators and stuff. Like if you need help deciding how much of like a down payment is going to impact like how much you end up paying. So we'll get into it in a second. I'm going to try to get comfy here so we can just start chatting. All right, so I'm just going to hop straight into questions and then we'll kind of like chat along the way, like if there's something specific to like my experience. But the number one question that I got from you guys is like, where do you even start? I know that a lot of you guys maybe have been renting, now you're looking to buy a home, or it's been a while since you buy a home, you need a refresher. Where do you even start? What does the process look like? Do you start by having a real estate agent? Do you start with your mortgage lender? How does that work? So in my opinion, I feel like the number one thing that you have to know when you're thinking about buying a house is what is your mortgage budget, right? Like what is it that you want to be paying every month that's gonna go towards your mortgage? I feel like it's super important that you have an idea or at least a range of what you want to be paying for, because you don't want to like jump into like going and seeing houses and getting a real estate agent and all of that and then having them show you houses and then you fall in love with houses that you can't afford, or later you can't get approved for that loan. So number one is figuring out what that budget looks like. You don't want to find yourself in a situation where you end up being like what's called like house poor, where like a huge chunk of your monthly income goes towards just your house and then you don't have money for other things like, you know, going to Target and doing groceries, or, you know, having money to save for travel. Like obviously everybody's priorities are different, but if 90% of your monthly income is going towards your mortgage, that's not really gonna cut it, right? Like 10% of your income for everything else is probably not gonna cut it. So you gotta figure that out. I did a little bit of research yesterday and just like to see if there's like a rule of thumb for people, like how much of your income should technically go towards your mortgage. And it seemed like the consensus was like 28% or less, like so no more than 28% of your monthly income should be going towards your mortgage. So I don't know, if you're making like $7,000 every month, then 28% of that is $1,960. Maybe that's a little bit to some people, maybe that's a lot to other people. I feel like that's not a lot these days for like a 4-bedroom house. So that's just kind of like what you want to decide for yourself and for your family first. Then once you have an idea of what your mortgage payment more or less is gonna look like, in my opinion, I think that you need to find out how much of a loan you're gonna be able to be approved for. So that means going to your lender, finding your mortgage lender and having that conversation with them of like, how much house am I gonna qualify for? Because if you're new to this completely, Like most people don't have $300,000 or $400,000 cash sitting in their bank. If you do, I mean, let me know what you do for a living, because I don't. So if you don't have the full amount of money to pay for the house, then you need to go to a mortgage lender, and those are the people that are going to give you the loan to be able to purchase the house, and then you're paying them every month for the loan so that you can live in the house. And it is the kind of thing that you do have to qualify for. So one of the questions that I did get is like, what do the mortgage lenders look for? Like, what is that process look like? So the mortgage lender is gonna want access to like all of your accounts, or I don't know if they want access or records, or you have to print out your records, but they wanna be able to look at all of your accounts to basically make sure that you can afford whatever loan amount you end up getting. They wanna make sure that you're gonna pay it back. So they're gonna be looking at your income, they're gonna be looking at your W-2s or whatever source of, you know, however it is that you get paid. They want proof of that income. I think I wrote somewhere here that I was doing, again, some research. Most lenders are gonna want like 2 years of steady consecutive income to show for. Like, you wanna show that you've had 2 years of consecutive steady income. If you're self-employed though, they usually look for like 3 years of income. So that's something to keep in mind. So again, just proof that you can afford what it is that you're qualifying for. And then also like they're looking at your debts. So they're looking at things like your debt to income ratio. So those are like all the things that they're assessing to then eventually give you the loan that it is that you're looking to get. So when we bought this house, we went to the mortgage lender and we told them like, look, I don't want to pay any more than $2,500 every month for a house. Like, that's literally what I told the guy that did our mortgage, because in Homestead, when we were living back in Miami, the house that we had bought in Homestead, we were paying like $2,500 a month for, because we had to pay not only the mortgage, but taxes and insurance, and we had like 2 association fees. So our like monthly payment for living in that house was $2,500. So I told the guy that was doing our mortgage here this time around, like, look, I don't wanna pay any more than $2,500. What's that gonna get me in a house in Virginia? And by having that conversation with him, he was able to tell us like, okay, for that price range, you can probably get like a $400,000 house with $2,500. So that for me was like the top of our price range when we started looking at houses. I hope you guys are still with me. I hope that makes sense. So then once we had that number in mind, and once we had qualified for the $400,000 loan or whatever, and proven that we could afford it, that we could pay for it, then we took that to our real estate agent and we told her like, hey, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for this kind of house. These are the specs of the house that we're looking for. And like the max budget for us right now is $400,000. I'm sure that she appreciated the fact that we had like already been like pre-qualified or whatever. We had pre-qualified for the loan, because then she was showing us houses that realistically she knew that we could afford, that we weren't going to, again, fall in love with, and then she was gonna have to go back to her clients and say, hey, these people wanted the house but they can't afford it, that kind of stuff. So that's how we did things. The entire home buying process can be very confusing, right? There's like a lot of terms that you don't know about, but even though I was like a newbie, and even though I didn't really know 100% everything that I was doing, I felt so much more in control knowing that I wasn't gonna end up buying a house that then down the road they were gonna tell me, hey, every month you owe like $3,000, and I was gonna go, okay, great, now we can't afford that, or that it was gonna be like a surprise at the end. That's what I didn't want. I didn't want to like just be like bamboozled in any way, or end up at the last minute being like, okay, no, there's all these extra fees that you have to pay for. So that's why I think it's so important to get some of those numbers right at the beginning, so that you know what you're looking at and what you're getting into. So now that you kind of like know what the process would be, or like what our process was, I guess the next question would be then like, okay, who lends you the money? Who's gonna give it to you? How do you find a mortgage lender? And that's where NerdWallet comes in. So I'm gonna show you guys really quick, just a quick little screen recording of some of the things you might be interested in using their services for, going on their website and all of that. So they have a website, but they also have an app, by the way. Keep that in mind. You can just download the app on your phone. But this is their homepage. I've shown it to you guys before. You can click on whatever it is that you're looking to get some help with. In this case, you can click on mortgages. And then over here, you can compare just some top mortgage lenders. You can see like what kinds of loans they offer. And I think that's helpful because all loans are different, right? Some loans are going to require you to put like 20% down. Some of them are going to be better for like first-time home buyers. Some of them are going to be better for people that don't have a big down payment. So like comparing interest rates, all of that is, I think, very helpful. So that's one of the things that you can do with NerdWallet. If you go up here to where they have calculators, that's what I was looking at yesterday, you guys, and I found it very helpful. So click on calculators, you can go over here to mortgages, and here is like, it's like a gold mine, honestly, of things that you can look through if you're starting to think about buying a home. So you have a mortgage calculator over here where you could literally like put in the house price and then what's your down payment, and then you can kind of like calculate more or less what your monthly payment would look like. What would that monthly payment look like? So like, let's say that the house that you're looking for is $300,000. If you put a $60,000 down payment, which I mean, that's still a lot of money for down payment, but if you do a traditional like 20% down payment, this is what your monthly payment would look like more or less. If you had more money, like let's say that you had $100,000 to put down, then your monthly payment is going to be less, obviously, because you're putting more money down in the beginning. If you had less money to put down, let's say that you found a loan that only required you to put $20,000 down, then your monthly payment would be higher. So playing around with some of these numbers, in my opinion, is very helpful. There's another really good calculator here that says how much house can I afford. So this one's pretty cool because you can select here, like kind of what I was talking about, like what do you want your monthly payment to be, right? So let's say you don't want your monthly payment to be any more than more or less $2,500. Then in Miami, this would be like more or less how much money we would be able to afford in terms of a house. You can play around with the city. You can play around with like what your down payment would be. Okay, so I could afford an almost $600,000 house if I put that much down. So you can play around with the numbers and kind of see more or less what you might be able to afford. There's down payment calculators too that I think is really good. And this article here too is great because it kind of talks about different loans and how much money you would need to put down according to what loan it is that you're going to apply for and all of that. And then here, of course, you can like play around with plugging in numbers of how much your down payment is, what your interest rate is, and then what the home price is. And then you can see like how that affects what your monthly payment is and all of that. So definitely look at that. I highly recommend that you check out NerdWallet. They're just a great resource for all things financing. So that's all I'm gonna say about them. Just spend some time on there and use some of those calculators and their guides. See, they have like articles here like first time home buyer tips. Very good, useful info if you're looking to buy a house. Like I said, it's one of the biggest decisions you're gonna make. So you don't wanna make it on a whim. You don't wanna make like an emotional purchase. You wanna buy something obviously that is good for you, that's good for your family, but you don't want to like get in over your head in terms of buying a house because like most of the time you're stuck with this house for a very long time. It's not like you can buy a house and then like the next day decide, you know what, this isn't the house for me, I'm just gonna move into another house. Because something that I didn't know is that you have all these closing costs. So traditionally your closing costs associated with like the purchase of a home, it's between like 3 to 5% of the house value. So if you buy a $300,000 house, normally you're going to have to pay 3 to 5% of that in closing costs. So like what's 4% of $300,000? That's like $12,000 that you have to come up with for closing costs. That's paying for things like the title transfers, like all of the stuff that I don't really know too much about, honestly, like all of the legal preparation and the fees, and there's all these costs that are associated with closing a home and like the paperwork and all of that. So you end up paying that much money. So just to give you an idea, even if you got a loan that required 0% down, which there are some of those and I'll get to those in a minute, but even if you got a home that required you 0% down payment, you still have to have at least those $12,000 or whatever it is that your closing costs actually are to be able to close on the home. So normally you do have to come to the closing of a home, the purchase of a home, with some money. It's not like you can just say, you know what, I'm just gonna get a loan that requires me to put zero money down and poof, I walk into the house the next day. Like there is some money you have to have, which is why it's important to be saving if you're looking to buy a home. And in regards to like the loans themselves, you can actually like do something about it here using NerdWallet. You can pre-qualify for the loans, you can apply for the loans just by going to NerdWallet. So it's not just like a research kind of thing, like you can actually go through with the process using NerdWallet. I definitely wanted to make sure you guys knew that. I know that's a lot of information. You guys, I asked you guys what you wanted me to talk about, and a lot of you guys were like, look, I know nothing about buying a house, so anything that you can share would be helpful. So that's just, I hope you've learned something this far, but I have a lot of other questions that I wanted to answer, and hopefully some of these will be helpful too. So after like, where do you start? I got a lot of questions about the down payment, which I kind of touched on, but traditionally what I read up on is that you need normally about 20% of the home value to put as your down payment. Now, don't freak out, because there are some loans that will require you to put down less money than that. But when you do that, you end up having to pay like, I think it's called PMI, which is like private mortgage insurance. So you end up kind of paying more money throughout the entire term of the loan, because you're paying for insurance in case you end up not being able to afford it, since you're not coming with as much money to the table. So usually like the safer route and the better financial route is if you have 20% of the home value, that's what you want to put down. So if you don't have 20% down, then maybe you shop around for some of those other loans. Joe and I got very lucky, and I'm very thankful that it was the case that Joe is a veteran, so we did qualify for the VA loan. With a VA loan, it's one of the loans that requires 0% down. Now, there's pros and cons with that. So 5 years ago, when we bought our first house down in Homestead, we did that with the VA loan, and we still ended up putting maybe like $5,000 or $10,000 down for the house, because again, we had to pay for closing costs and all of that kind of stuff. But we didn't have to come with like a huge chunk of money to be able to close on that house. The only downside is that when we sold that house, we really didn't make any money on that house, because we hadn't really gotten, like we hadn't had enough equity in the house to really make a profit from it. And the only reason why we didn't end up in a bad financial spot, to be real with you guys, is that when we sold that house and we moved into this house in Virginia, it was a move for Joe's work, and it was a funded move. So Joe's job paid for the closing costs. So because of that, we were able to move up here, and we weren't, like the financial burden didn't hit us as hard, because had we not had that help, I think we would have probably been like either upside down on the house, or ended up like needing to pay money out of our pocket to close on the house. So I get why it would be like appealing to look at loans that require less money down, but like the financial experts are probably gonna tell you that if you don't have 20% down to put as a down payment, then maybe you're not quite ready to buy a house, or that you should look at houses that are cheaper so that you can afford a bigger down payment. But that being said, like everything's expensive, like super expensive. And to think like in one of the examples I was showing you is like 20% is 60 grand. I know a lot of people don't have just 60 grand sitting around that you can put down as a down payment. So buying your first house especially is hard. And so my recommendation is just that you start trying to save as early as you can. That is a goal. If that's like a serious goal of yours to own a home, then you should be really making that your focus and cutting back on a lot of other things to build that savings account for your home purchase. But just don't think that I'm here like oblivious to the fact that it's very expensive and it's very hard to save up big chunks of money like that. Like it's not easy, because I think it's important too to like remember that when you're buying a house, like if you're used to renting a house, let's say, when something breaks in your house, if you have issues, normally you can get it fixed, and then your landlord normally takes care of whatever it is that, you know, has to be paid to get stuff fixed. When you own your home, like you're on your own. When you own your home, you have to pay for all the repairs, you have to pay for any renovations that you do, and things are gonna happen too that you're not gonna expect. You're gonna have issues. Like, I don't care if you buy a freaking brand new house, chances are that there's gonna be something that comes up. So you don't wanna spend all of the money that you have on being able to even purchase a house, period. You still have to have a rainy day fund. You have to have some kind of emergency fund in the background to be able to draw from, God forbid something happens. Because when you buy a house, it's there's a lot you have to do. Like I was just telling you guys on Instagram today that the sliding glass door in our kitchen area is like not working. Like it's super hard to open. It's an older door, so we had looked at getting a new sliding glass door with the screen. Joe went to Lowe's and the quote they gave us was like $2,000 for a new door between like the parts and the labor, and I'm like, for a door? Like, are you serious? $2,000 for a door? The other thing I didn't expect was how expensive it is to have somebody paint your house. When we moved into this house, I don't know if you guys remember if you've been around for a while, but this house needed like a fresh coat of paint downstairs. So that was one of the things we initially did before we even moved in here. We got the downstairs painted. We also got the cabinets in the kitchen painted, and then the cabinets in my bathroom and the kids' bathroom, those are like a dark wood, so we got them painted white. I think it cost like upwards of $6,000 for that entire job, for the job of all the painting. And I was like, are you serious? So that was other money that we had to pay right when we bought this house. So things are gonna come up. It's not cheap. Nothing is cheap. Nothing in home repair is cheap. So just keep that in mind. I got a question that I thought was interesting. Somebody had asked me like what the top 3 things are to look at when you're looking to buy a house with toddlers. So for me, I'll tell you like my 3 things, like my 3 big things were that we had some kind of backyard, because I knew that I was going to want the kids to be able to play in the backyard, spend some time outside. So that was something that we told our realtor, like, hey, we need something that has a nice yard. And then the other big thing for me was some kind of open-ish layout. I wanted to make sure, obviously, like if I was cooking in the kitchen, that I could still see the kids, because you guys know how paranoid I am about being able to see the kids with my eyeballs at all times. So that was a big deal to me. Ultimately, the house that we got now, it's not the most ideal in terms of open layout, because like our kitchen counter is a little bit too high. So there are some times where I can't see the kids, but it was like the best that we could get at the time. And then the other big thing was that I wanted a house that was either 1 story, or that if it was 2-story, I wanted all of the rooms upstairs together. I didn't want to have like the master on the bottom and then the kids' rooms upstairs, or like one random room on the bottom and then all the other rooms upstairs. Like that was a big deal for me. One of the things I really wish about this house that was different was that the laundry room wasn't in the basement. But again, when we bought this house, you guys, I don't know if you've been here around like that long, but we bought this house when I was pregnant with Jackson, and I couldn't even fly at that point to come and see the houses because I was that far along in my pregnancy. So Joe came up like 1 week. He came up, met with the real estate agent, toured, I don't know, maybe no more than 10 houses. I don't think he toured more than that. And I was like Zooming, FaceTiming, whatever, Skyping him while he was looking at houses. And we just had to make a decision like that. Like when I moved into this house, I had never stepped foot in it, but Joe did a really good job with the inventory that they had. But speaking of a good real estate agent, that is something that I think is very important. Some of you guys asked like what you need to look for when you're buying a house. I think that when you have a real estate agent that's good, that knows what they're doing, that's experienced, they're gonna help you out in terms of knowing what to look for. Like our realtor was great. She looked at things that I would have never in a million years thought to ask or question. She looked at something like the pipes downstairs, like in other houses that we were looking at, like there's different pipes. And if the pipes are like from this year and before, then they're bad pipes, they might have to get fixed. Like there's a lot of things that go into buying a house that, especially like maybe you watch HGTV all of the time. I don't know a lot of things about like the structure of a house and things like that. So having a good realtor who knows what they're doing is very helpful, because they will like make it a point to, you know, ask questions on your behalf that you might not know of or think of to ask. So somebody had asked like if this home has gained equity. I do think that this home has gained equity just because of like how the market is right now. Like I said before, we bought this house for $340,000, what, like a year ago? Like in 2020 is when we bought this house, before the pandemic, like right before the pandemic. And I have like a neighbor a couple doors down the street that their house I think is pretty similar to ours, and they sold it for like 4 something. So I don't know exactly what the house right now would appraise for, but I do feel like it's probably gained some equity. The bad side is that most home values have gone up. So if we leave here and go somewhere else, we're gonna pay more for that next house, regardless of where we move, pretty much. Then speaking of like the current housing market, somebody had asked like, how much over asking would you bid for? There's houses going in this person's area that are going for like $100,000 over asking. That's a really sad thing, honestly. The fact that houses are like being listed on Zillow, like if you go to Zillow and you see a house that says, hey, this house is going for $400,000, and that house would end up being sold for $500,000, that's insane. But I know that that's happening in some cities. Miami is one of them, and it's making me very depressed because if I ever think about moving down there, it's gonna be really hard to afford something reasonable. But how much over asking would I bid? Only what I could afford. Only what I could afford, looking at my down payment, looking at my monthly budget again. I'm not gonna overbid on a house just because I want a house. I know that there's some people that are in a situation where they absolutely need to move, but I would kind of not do that unless I absolutely had to, because you don't know what the market's gonna do. You don't want to end up being upside down on your house, and if house values next week go down and you paid $100,000 over asking, I mean, that's not a very smart financial move. So I'm always more conservative when it comes to big home purchases. Like, had it been up to Joe when we bought this house, he probably would have leaned more towards, you know what, we can afford a $400,000 house. We got qualified for a $400,000 house. We can afford to pay $2,500 a month for a mortgage. So why don't we look at houses that are $400,000? That would kind of be his point of view. Hey, we can get more of a house, a bigger house, all of that. Whereas I'm more conservative because I always think like, well, what if, God forbid, Joe loses his job? Or what if, God forbid, I start making less money from YouTube? I would rather have more money to play with and more money to save up for vacations and travel and being able to save for the kids, all of that, and have a smaller mortgage payment than something like way over my head. So that's just me, like as a person, like I've always been like that. So that's something that you want to think about. So what do you ask your realtor? I think obviously you talk to your realtor about your budget, but there's other things that you're going to want to ask about the neighborhood. You know, is it a safe neighborhood? Are there schools? What's the crime rate? A lot of that stuff you can look up and do your research on. Something that we were kind of paying attention to was like if the neighborhood had sidewalks, if it was going to be somewhere where we could push the stroller and take the kids out for a walk. Are there street lights? Is it super dark? Like I know that there were some houses that we looked at when we moved over here that like it was super dark at night. It was like, you know, windy little roads, and then at night it was pitch black in the neighborhood, and I was like, I don't want that, because if I go out anywhere at night and I'm trying to get back home, I'm gonna like have too much anxiety. So we crossed a lot of those off of our list when we were looking at the houses. Other things, like not so much in Florida where everything is like not a hill, but like over here there's a lot of homes that have like a super inclined driveway. So that was kind of like a no for us. Like we didn't want a super inclined driveway, but again, maybe you like that. Like everybody's needs are different, but those are some things that you're gonna wanna ask them. Obviously, you wanna know when the house was built. Have there been any big issues with the house? Somebody asked like what my biggest regret was in buying this house, and I'll tell you, the biggest regret was that somehow, I guess they missed it in the inspection, or I don't know honestly how that happened, but the fact that we had mice in our attic. I don't know if you guys remember, but several months after we bought this house, we had like a mouse issue, and then they looked into the attic. Orkin came, looked into the attic, said you guys have a big issue, the insulation, there's something wrong with the insulation in the attic. And we ended up having to pay like $6,000 to Orkin to fully exterminate the attic, to put new insulation, and that's a big expense. For us, it wasn't the end of the world. It sucked, but I wish that they would have caught that. So you definitely want to make sure that you're getting your house inspected, that it's a good inspector. You know, pay attention to their reports. I think when we got this house inspected, there was a report, but again, somehow they missed that. So I've got a few more things here that I wanted to answer. Again, just hoping that this stuff will be somewhat helpful. So what if the house you want is super expensive and above your budget? If the house that you want is super expensive and above your budget, like I've continued to say, just keep saving. Don't buy it yet. keep saving, automate your savings, you know, figure out what your goal is. So like if you want to buy a house, you're gonna need a $20,000 down payment. Divide $20,000 by however many years you think that's gonna take you, or, you know, do the math so you can figure out what you need to save every month. And one of the best things that you can do in terms of savings that way is to automate it. So I'm sure you've heard it before, but like set up with your bank that when you get your paycheck every month, that a certain amount of money is automatically like sent to your savings account, so that you never see that money, you never count on that money. It's just the best way, honestly, if you're looking to save up. So how much did we put down on this house? So remember, the first house that Joe and I ever bought, we bought with the VA loan back in Homestead. That was like 0% down. I think, don't quote me, but I think that when you do a VA loan, like you can do a VA loan the next time that you buy a house, but you have to put something down. Like I know when we bought this house here in Virginia, we weren't able to just put 0 down. We had to put something down. I don't know if it was like 5%, or I don't know exactly how much that was, but I know that we had to put something down. And I think we put, if I was looking at my paperwork right, I think we put like 10,000 down for this house. So again, not a lot of money, which means that our total loan amount was more money, and that's probably why we pay more monthly. But at the time, we didn't have like a ton of money saved up, so it didn't, like we weren't gonna be able to just put all of that money down. But we knew that we could afford the monthly payments. We knew that that was like a comfortable monthly payment for us, all of that. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, that we only put like 10,000 down on this house. Now, do we pay more money on top of our mortgage to pay it off faster? We don't yet, only because this isn't really my forever home, and we've had other like priorities in terms of paying off stuff. Like for a while we were paying off my car, which is now paid off, and now we're looking at, like, we've been working on increasing our like retirement account money that we're saving for retirement. I'm gonna look at starting up a little savings for the kids now. But once you've kind of squared away other things and, like, you know, paid off all your debt and all of that, one of the best things that you can do with extra money that you have in your budget is to put more money every month to pay off your mortgage faster. So that is something that you can do when you have your loan amount and you're like paying your mortgage every month. There's a way to like set up an extra payment. Like you can do like one extra payment every year, or you can add like extra money that you pay that goes towards the loan principal amount. And I'm telling you, like, even if you pay like $200 more every month, you can save so much money over the course of your loan. There's a bunch of calculators too on the internet that will help you figure out like what does an extra $100 every month do for your loan. Like, and it's incredible to see how much quicker you can pay your loan, like how much you end up saving on interest if you pay your mortgage off faster, if you put a little bit more money that you pay towards your mortgage every month. So keep in mind that that is something you can do, and it's actually a very smart thing to do. I hope that if like we see that we're gonna be here for much longer, I hope that that may be something that we can do, or for sure, like when we move into our next house, and that's more of like a forever home, that is something that's gonna be a priority of ours, to try to do whatever we can to pay off our house as soon as we can. So I think that's answering most of the questions. You know, I got a lot of questions of like, what do you pay? So if I didn't say it already, like, we bought this house, we bought it for $340,000. It's a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom house here in Virginia, and I think we put like 10,000 down. So what we ended up getting our loan for was like $329,000 ish here. That's what we owed the bank, and then that's what we pay every month. So with taxes and insurance and like all of that stuff that goes to escrow, like we roll all of that into our mortgage payment. We pay $1,750 a month. We have really great credit. That's like one of the things that Joseph Buell always like raves about. He's very proud of his credit, and I'm very proud of him obviously for his credit. But we had really great credit, so we got, at the time, we got a really good percentage for the interest rate for our loan. So we have a 3.25% interest rate. I think interest rates right now honestly are lower, just because like after the pandemic, I think the interest rates went down. It's one of those things that I was thinking about, should we refinance, all of that, but I don't know if we're quite at the point where it would make sense for us to refinance, because when you refinance you have to pay like closing costs again and all of that, and would it be worth it? I'm not sure. But definitely keep in mind that when you have better credit, you're gonna get a better interest rate. That's always gonna be in your favor. If you have not so great credit, there's still loans that you may qualify for, but your interest rate may be higher. So the best that you can do when you're thinking about buying a home is making sure that you're working on your credit, that you're working on paying off your debt, so that when your mortgage lender looks at your debt to income ratio, that's something that will be in your favor too if you pay off the debts, and then save whatever it is that you can for down payment. Like, I'll tell you guys now, like, you guys know my goal is to really be able to move down to Miami in the near future, right? I don't know if that's in the next year or 2 years or 3 years. Like, I'm putting it in God's hands, praying about that. But ideally, I would love to get back to Miami. The problem with that is that the houses down there, just to give you an idea, our house right here, $340,000 is what we paid for it. Any 4-bedroom, 3-bedroom house down in like the area where I want to be, like near my parents' house, all of that, the houses, when I look on Zillow, you guys, are like $550 on the very low end to maybe $600,000, $700,000, $800,000. So obviously our monthly payments would be way higher, and we'd have to have more money to put down. I don't even know if we'd be able to afford that, honestly. I don't even know if we would qualify for a loan that big. So what I'm focusing on right now is just saving as much as I can for a hefty down payment. So trying to save as much as I can. So we have, like, in our bank, a little savings account that's like a down payment account. And the more money I can get in there before we move into our next house, the better. Because, if we end up finding a house that's, like, hypothetically, let's say we find a house that's $600,000 and I have $100,000 already saved in the bank for a down payment, then my loan is not for $600,000, it's for $500,000, which still is a lot of money. But that's kind of where I'm getting at in terms of just doing what I can to get a big down payment for our future house. Even though I'm making money from YouTube, I know that the money that I make on YouTube could go away from 1 minute to the next. So I also don't want to get into a position where I'm counting on my income to help us afford a house. Like, if we can't afford a monthly payment off of Joe's income, then that's probably not going to be the house for us. So that's why I'm trying to do what I can. Like, now that we have the extra income with me working, that I'm putting that in a savings account, helping to build up that down payment lump sum amount, so that in the future we can at least bring down our loan amount. I don't know, I hope that makes sense, but I don't know. Point is that buying a house is a very big commitment, and it's something that if you get it wrong, it can affect a lot of things. If you get it wrong, if you end up buying a house that you can't really afford, it can really mess up like your other priorities and your other goals. So I always would recommend that you're a little bit more on the conservative side. Right now the market, it sucks. Right now the market is really hard for buyers. Maybe that means that you rent while you do whatever you can to save up a little bit, or maybe that means that you end up buying a house that's a little bit, smaller than what your ideal house was, and you make it work and you do whatever you can to renovate it little by little. But you don't ever want to just be like house poor and have all of your money going towards your house. So I know this video was long, I know this video was rambly, but I hope that at least the conversation gets you thinking, and that like you go online, start researching some of the questions that you had, go online to NerdWallet, check out their calculators, compare their different loans, try to see what loan might be something that you'd be looking at, see what their requirements are, and kind of do some of that upfront work before like just throwing yourself into it, and before, again, just starting to look at houses and having no idea like what it is that you want to pay or what you can actually afford to pay, what you'd be qualified for, and all of that. So I love you guys. If you have questions, leave them down below and I will try to answer them. I have, again, enjoyed having these like money talk videos. It's not everybody's jam, I get it, but it's something that I really like to do. I'm the one here in the house that has the budget spreadsheet. You guys know that I did my financial series here, so I'll leave links to some of those videos down below if you want to check them out. I did one that was like all about all of like our expenses as a family, like literally item by item, like all of the expenses we have, other ones about like our budgeting system, our cash envelopes or cash envelope system that we use. So check them out. But money is important. Like money is something that a lot of people don't like to talk about, or that can be confusing. A lot of it is confusing. A lot of people like to say, you know, it's not all about money, and it's not, right? Like at the end of the day, money is not the most important thing, but when you have a good hold on the money that you do have and you manage it well, it really like makes things run a lot smoother. So that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, thank you to NerdWallet for sponsoring and for giving me another opportunity to just chat with you guys about this stuff. Let me know if there's any other topics that you want me to cover, anything else you want me to talk about in terms of money, and that is it. So I love you guys. Thank you for watching. Make sure to give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.